I am now going to turn it over to the main course for tonight, the main bout, if you will. We are extremely excited to have some really interesting and fascinating and important gentlemen to have a conversation here about what it means to have a life in fighting games. These people really don't need a lot of introduction, but one of them is a fierce competitor in his own right. He was an EVO finalist. He was a member of the Street Fighter USA team, but he's most well known as one of the greatest scholars of the game, and also a game designer who's working on at Sony on some serious high-level competitive gaming. And the other gentleman is quite simply the greatest of all time, the ultimate champion, the monster, a god who walks among us, the beast. So they're going to have a conversation. Please help me welcome Seth Killian and Daigo Umehara. Put your hands together for these guys right here.
So I guess it's to me to kick things off. I get a little emotional at times like this. It's good to be back with this guy, but everybody here in this room and the fighting game community and everything that they've done and meant to me has been really continually incredible. So I got to choke this one down and get on with the main event. So I've known this guy personally for a number of years and been lucky to get to know him a little bit as a person. But he first sort of made his mark on America back in the Alpha 3 days. When he came over, we'd heard legends of what was going on in Japan, but that was really the first time we'd gone head-to-head in a real competitive format where Mr. Umehara, as a very young man, probably too young to travel by himself, fought against one of our greatest American champions, Alex Valle, in an incredible match, and really put us on notice that we had a ways to go, that everything we'd heard about Japan was as true. But rather than dig right into the competitive side, I want to take us back to the beginning of Daigo's sort of life and what some of the things that have happened there and how they've led him to be the great champion we know today. So as some of you may know, but maybe news to others, Daigo's father was actually a very talented competitive martial artist in Japan who was thought to be capable of competing at the Olympic level and maybe beyond, very strong competitor, but he was pressured. His father was pressured by his parents to take a more traditional path and get a standard job, work a 9-to-5, have a family, all that kind of stuff. On the contrary, Daigo's father always supported Daigo's decisions and told him, follow whatever you think your greatness is, wherever you think you're going to be the best. That's what I want for you. Even though he wasn't excited about gaming in particular, he wasn't sure that was the best choice, he still supported him. So I was curious how you think that kind of support from your father, again, parents being so important everywhere, particularly in Japan, how has that affected or enabled him to be here today?
そうですね。子供の頃から結構仲が良かったんで、よく。
I've been really great friends with my father. Ever since I was young, we always talked a lot, and I would say that of all the things in my life, we really have a lot of the same opinions about a lot of the same things. So about maybe 70% of what I've done in my life, I would say, has been directly influenced by my father. So I have a really close relationship with him, and at the same time, when I was growing up, when I got to the point where I felt like I was really strong at games and fighting games in particular, I was around 14 or 15. But I had started to, go to, arcades every day, basically, from the age when I was 10. So every day from 10 on, I would go to the arcades and I would play. But there was never a time when my father would say, hey, don't do that, don't go to the arcades, or something like that. He really always, let me do what I wanted to do. And that let me become a better player and really, refine my craft and, my skills in the game. So, just having that, unrelenting support behind me was really, I would say, a big influencer on my life.
大きい だろうなと思うんですよね。
So for me, one of the things I love a lot of video games, and there are different great things about all of them. But for me, multiplayer games are really special. There's like a kind of intimacy there, where I know something about you when I play you. I see sort of how your mind works, even while you're trying to hide it from me. I feel like elements of yourself are exposed, elements of myself are exposed, even when I'm trying to sort of hide them. And I think this is nowhere more sort of clear than in fighting games, where there's sort of, there's no teammates, the backgrounds are kind of stupid, except for the Mad Catz. We all love the Mad Catz. The backgrounds are sort of don't matter, but it's just you. It's sort of, mano a mano, or character a character, going head to head. And I think you really see a clear expression of people as they play fighting games. So I'm curious, do you feel there are aspects of your individual personality represented in the way you play, from the character choice onto your personal style and the way you approach the game?
で例えば大きな大会なんかだと特にそうなんだけど、こう大事な
Yeah, definitely. It's something that your personality is something that comes out in your play style, even if you don't want it to. Basically, you can't really hide, especially when you're in those really important matches, those high pressure situations in a tournament. Really, that's when a player's true personality and then their true inner self comes out in play like that. So maybe not so much in normal matches or casual matches, but whenever I'm even in my daily life, I'm always training for that big moment when, I know that I'm going to have to react and, really bring myself to the forefront. And then a lot of preparation goes into, being ready for those really big moments.
まあそうやって普段からそのとっさの時にいい行動が取れるような準備というか、そういう日常を送るようには心がけてますね。
What do you see as the core elements of Street Fighter? So what makes a fighting game a Street Fighter game? What's at the heart of a Street Fighter game?
なんだろうな。
I wonder what. Yeah,
Well,
hard to say. Really, what it is that it's the granddaddy, right? It's the original fighting game that really put it onto the map. So just the fact that it has that long legacy and that long tradition of being the first real fighting game is something that really makes it unique, even when compared with other fighters.
難しいですね、それはね。何ですかね。
It says Street Fighter on the top of the
Yeah,
list. Yeah.
Street Fighter 書いてある。
That was the correct answer. Sorry. Yeah.
名前が Street Fighter.
What bonds you to fighting games and Street Fighter in particular? Is it the game itself? Do you just love the game? Is it the community? These people? Maybe not these people, but other cooler people around the game. No, love you guys. New York is my favorite. Is it the promise of financial reward, or is it a career? What is it about Street Fighter that keeps you coming back to that as a game?
In Japan, there isn't a lot of prize money to be won from specific tournaments. So, in the U.S., you have big prize pools. People can be motivated by that kind of thing. But in Japan, it's really not about the money. So, money was never really a big motivating factor for me to, enjoy Street Fighter and be, a professional fighting game player. When I first had my first encounter with Street Fighter, I was really, impressed and really, interested in the game. I thought it was really amazing, seeing two, large characters on the screen duke it out, with life bars. The entire concept of a fighting game was really new and, really exciting for me at the time. So I would say, from the age when I was, 10 to maybe 13, those first few years, I was really into the actual game content. But as you play the games more and more, you basically get used to what each game has to offer. It's not really about you're no longer excited by the actual game itself so much anymore the longer you play it. So then where it really changed for me then was that I started to really appreciate the community that came and was built around the games itself. So having that relationship with other players where you could come up with strategies and devise different tactics, have rivalries, that kind of thing. That entire community around the game is really what has kept me, really motivated and interested in playing the games over such a long period of time.
I want to talk about your individual style in some ways, but a lot of people associate still gaming with nerds, sometimes for good reason, sometimes for not such good reasons. In Japan, you were actually considered kind of a tough guy growing up, and would win fights in the playground. Do you feel like you've carried any of that into your any of that over into your gaming career? Or how has that experience influenced your attitude towards fighting on the screen?
この部分はその
When I was a kid back in Japan, we would go, play in the park or something like that. There'd be, 10 of us. And I would be the leader. I would bring everyone together and I'd, decide what we do. But, it wasn't just about making, activities fun for me or a few people. As the leader of the group, I really had to try and make it fun for everyone involved. So I was always thinking about, what can I do to make, this community of people really enjoy what we're doing and have a good time. So, when I look at my, play style and choices throughout the years with regards to fighting games, I really feel like it is mirrored in that way because obviously there are some characters in the game that, in fighting games that you feel are better than others. And then whenever I look at the characters, I always feel like, well, if I pick this particular character who I know is strong, then I know I'm going to win. But everyone around me is probably going to get really bored if I play that way. So is a way to keep it interesting for other players, I tend to gravitate towards characters that would keep it interesting for everyone watching.
という気はしますね。
That may be the greatest excuse for losing I've ever heard. That's the best of all time. No, that's excellent. I'm actually going to skip a few questions and jump straight to it because I think that brings us right into another question I had about his style. So I'm going to run my mouth a little bit here for people that are maybe less familiar with some of the core elements of Street Fighter. But, everyone knows chess, and there are situations in chess. I used to sit around with these books, and they'd be chess problems where there's, your pieces are in this position, the opponent's pieces are in this position. How many moves till checkmate? And there's a perfect solution to those problems. There's a way you can solve it. It's perfect. It's great. Very satisfying. Fun little way to spend a nerdy afternoon. One of the things I love best about Street Fighter is that there is no ideal solution in Street Fighter most of the time, the vast majority of the time. All of your decision making, all of your success depends intimately on what your opponent decides as well. So it's not a deterministic game. Everything you do is only wins or loses based on what your opponent is also doing at the same time. So one of the strongest techniques in Street Fighter, and the reason it gets compared to sort of gambling and poker, is you put your opponent into sort of a guessing situation where whether, at its simplest, maybe a cross-up. Do I have to block from the front or do I have to block from the back? I don't know. If I guess right, yay, I get to live and maybe try and move to a better situation. If I guess wrong, I lose a lot of damage, and I may lose the round. So one of the strongest techniques in the overall game is to put your opponent into these bad guessing situations, and that leads to certain strong characters are able to do something that we in the community call the vortex. We talked about this term before. Characters like Akuma who put you into a very bad guessing situation, and at the end of it, if you guess wrong, he'll knock you down, and then you're back in the exact same bad situation. So you're making 1 in 4 guess, which is a bad situation, and then when you get that wrong, you have to make another 1 in 4 guess, and that really sucks, and you lose. You get blown up, and you lose very quickly. So this is bringing us to a question of style, because one of the strongest players in the game right now, and maybe of all time, is a guy named Infiltration from Korea. And he is, well, that's perfect, because he is famous for his Akuma play. He's a very strong Vortex character, and what he likes to do stylistically is to sort of play it very safe. He denies his opponent opportunities to attack until he finally finds an opening, and then he'll make you run these horrible guessing games where he can blow you up very quickly and win. So Infiltration has a very strong style and was able to win EVO last year with a very strong performance, recently won the 25th anniversary Capcom tournament, and in both those cases ran into Daigo and actually took him out. So these are impressive performances. He's really kicking butt. He's doing great, but he hasn't attracted that many fans relative to his victories. Like, he's making, the biggest victories in the world, but everyone respects it. I certainly respect it and am impressed by it, but he's not drawing a lot of people in, and I think some of what they don't like is sort of his relatively safe play. So Umehara has just been speaking about this. Umehara-san has taken a different road where he plays a character like Ryu. So I would characterize Infiltration's style as basically very safe, sort of deny the opponent opportunity, and then when you finally have an opening, press it very hard. So it's sort of run, 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 safe, 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 and then a lot of advantageous guesses. Umehara's style, particularly, or in part because of his character, is much more on the razor's edge, where he will create many much more dangerous situations, small situations. He's not taking too many crazy risks, but part of the reason I think people have been driven wild by his style of play and really love it is he's actually known for a technique known as the Umeshoryu, which is nicknamed after Umehara, where he'll just do an uppercut out of nowhere. It's just crazy, and it's Like you're watching it and you're like, boy, uppercut here would be a really bad idea. And then bang, uppercut, and then he wins the round by doing that, and it blows everybody's mind. And I think that's very exciting for people. So he acknowledges what do you think about Infiltration's style? And I guess this plays into your last answer. He is playing a very safe style. I think that's unquestionably a very strong style. You choose a different path. Why is it that you choose this path? Is it just for the fans? Is it what else is it about that plays to his strengths?
まずね、
First off, I want to say that, I think Infiltration is a really amazing player. He's extremely skilled, and, although, he does have a good character, but he's also perfected that character to the point where, no one else can really touch him, even if they use the same character. So, Infiltration definitely amazing, but with regards to, playstyle, yeah, he definitely has, a more measured, a kind of more defensive playstyle. And actually, it's the case that, before I was actually similar to him. So when I was 14 years old, it was a time period when I wanted to win no matter what. I was just bent on winning, like that's it. I just wanted to win. I didn't care about the game. I didn't care about anything else. So my play style was actually very similar to his. I was very defensive, and then when I got my chance, I would go in and then, but it was really, really measured and, really, kind of reserved in that kind of way. But I was extremely successful with that play style as well. I could beat all these other players. I was really, really strong. And, at that time, I thought, man, fighting games are really easy. Like, I know I have the secret to winning. Like, I know exactly what I need to do. But then at that time, I had this other older guy who was, also a player in the same arcade, maybe 10 years older. But he came up to me one day and he said, hey, look, we understand that you're really good at fighting games, but if you keep playing this way, no one is going to really be satisfied with the results. They aren't going to admit, that you are the better player. They're not going to be happy with what's going on here. So then, it really goes back to that example I brought up when I was a kid, making the community happy, making everyone happy. It really made me think about, if I really want the community around me to keep enjoying the game and we all have a good time together, then I can't just focus 100% on winning no matter the cost. So it really did make me think about, my play style and which characters to select.
So what then would be for you, well, one, is there such a thing as a perfect match of Street Fighter? Not the 7 golden letters, but an ideal, like the platonic ideal of a Street Fighter. Is there such a thing as a perfect Street Fighter match? And if so, what would it look like? And then, final question, I'll squeeze this in. If you had the choice between playing perfect Street Fighter matches, but losing half the time, versus just winning all the time, what would you choose?
格闘ゲームってどんなに完璧にやっても運の要素が絶対絡むんですよね。例えば
There's definitely, ideas of playing perfectly within, fighting games, but as you probably all aware, fighting games also involves a lot of luck as well, right? And I especially feel for characters who rely on things like vortexes and things like that, especially, I can give the example of Goki. He can go, from his Hyakishu, he can do, the throw or the low. He has a lot of different options, and a lot of the times it doesn't really matter, if you can predict what's going to happen because it's really random. So I feel like that element of randomness is something that's always going to be in fighting games. So you can never really get to that point of playing the perfect game. I mean, even if you do everything, correctly and, you read all the correct moves and things like that, once you get to that certain point, then, the game can really go either way, when maybe each player doesn't even know what's going to happen during some of the mix-ups, right? But when it comes to, would I rather prefer to play a perfect game and then lose, or then, never play, or don't play a perfect game and then keep on winning, I really look at it within, the short term and the long term. So, it's great that if you can, win without playing, your perfect game and you can, get lucky or things like that. But I would feel that in the long term, the player who, sticks to their guns, who really, learns the ins and outs of the games and really tries to perfect their strategy and then play that perfect game is the one who's going to be successful in the long run, even if they're going to be random out every once in a while by, various factors which happen within, the mix-up game.
完璧なプレーをしている人の方が絶対強いから、そっちを選びますね。はい。
So, I guess that leads me into a question I had. You were also competitive in Mahjong as well, but throughout your life you always seem to return to fighting games. What is it about fighting games that sets them apart from other competitive games, whether it be RTS like a StarCraft or a poker, games that have sometimes bigger prizes, also good competition. What is it that draws you back to fighters?
Where the difference becomes between mahjong and then fighting games, where in mahjong you're playing in real time, sure, but you can always say, hey, wait, I need a little bit of time to think about my next move. You have that leisurely option of taking time to figure out what you want to do. Whereas in a fighting game, it's real time. You can't pause or you're going to be disqualified. You really have to make the decisions at that moment. In the heat of battle. In that high pressure situation. So that's something that I really like about fighting games as compared to the other games that I have played. And one more thing that I really like about fighting games that I feel is important is basically the idea of having that distance and the range of attacks that can be used. So, for example, in a first-person shooter, I feel like it doesn't really matter what the range is. You shoot the gun and it goes across the screen, hits the guy in the head. There's not that element of, I'm this far, so which move should I use? Or, what's the strategy that exists within this ideal space? Like kind of that living on that razor's edge of will it reach, will it not reach? The idea of the two, forces moving back and forth and playing that field. That's something that I feel like other games don't really have when compared to fighting games.
I'm sure we'll hear it from the competitive shooter community on that one. but we're online. Yeah, that's definitely something that bonds me to fighting games as well, that intensity, the lack of a chance to sort of reflect and think, and the fact that the way that influences decisions that you make in the game, like you make bad decisions because you don't have time to sit yourself right and think about the right things. But, he's talking about the ranges on the screen, and one of the things I definitely like about the game is you have complete information about everything that's happening in the game except for what's in the mind of your opponent. So there's nothing you don't understand. You know how much life they have, you know where they are on the screen, probably. But you have that kind of complete information. I guess this is a question maybe about, since he's been playing for almost as long as I have, the role of information sharing in the game. So coming from the arcade and knowing the kind of players that the arcade generates and the kind of competition there, what do you think about players now who play online? And how do you think things like YouTube or Nico Nico video or online streams, how do you think those have changed the way players play? Playing online, playing with more information from other players.
So during the Street Fighter 2 days, we had the arcades, but really there weren't players who were strong in each region, right? You would have the Tokyo, the Osaka, Nagoya, the really big cities where all the players would kind of congregate, and those areas would get really strong. But when you went to the outer regions, where the smaller arcades, the smaller towns were, the players were a lot weaker. So there was a gap in the skill level between all the players back in the day. But nowadays, with Street Fighter 4, people are able to play online with anyone basically. So what we've really seen in the Japanese community, at least, is that the skill level of all the regions has been increasing and become really high. So I think that's a really great thing that you don't have to live in a big city now to really get that experience to become a better player. So I think it's really improved the level of play all over the country. But at the same time, if you get too used to playing online, you don't really get the chance to see people anymore, right? You don't go to the arcade, you don't have that human interaction with people face to face. That was a really important part of the gaming community when I was, playing, even back in the day, and I still feel like it's really important to have that, face-to-face communication. So the more we play online, I'm really afraid that, we're going to lose that human element of face-to-face, and I think that would be a real shame if that really happened.
So you've been at the top at or near the top for almost 20 years, which is pretty unbelievable in any competitive activity, particularly one that involves all this kind of reactions and things of that nature. What is it, I guess, that inspires you, motivates you to keep going and stay at the top? And also, most professional gamers tend to disappear after their 20s. They're washed up. Yeah. They can't hang anymore. Not all of them. I know there's still some people out here hanging in there. It's tough to, but you've maintained. What has changed in your game, if anything?
Well, we mentioned it before, I really had a lot of support from my father. He was really someone who, let me do what I wanted to do. And that was really, something that really motivated me to become the best because, he really gave me the choice to choose what I wanted to put all my time into. The fact that, I played, fighting games, I was good, I won tournaments, so that was all, really, really great for me. But, there was a time when I stepped away from fighting games when I was, in my early 20s. I quit fighting games, I went to play Mahjong for a little bit, and after that I actually quit that and I became like a normal guy working a job, at a transportation gig. So I was like lifting boxes and lifting crates and things like that. And then I did that for a few years actually, and then having that experience of being away from that, special fighting game, that kind of, pro, being away from that and then being a normal guy, working at, this kind of hard labor job, it really put things in their perspective because, I would get yelled at my boss. He'd be like, what the hell are you doing? So it was a totally different environment from what I was used to. And then, I did that for a few years, and then, when Street Fighter 4 came out, it really gave me the opportunity to come and play again. And then when I found that when I picked up the controller, I was really good. And I was able to beat everyone, basically. So, I realized, like, hey, I'm actually really good at fighting games. I should probably keep doing this. So then, that's really what it came to. But I really feel like having that experience of being away from the game for a few years, just doing something normally, is something that has allowed me to really keep things in perspective. It really keeps me, really grateful for the opportunity I've been given. All the abilities that I have, that make me good at fighting games, and I never take it for granted. So having that experience is something that has allowed me to be successful over such a long period of time, I think.
You've been called the Michael Jordan of Street Fighter, and recently I saw something very interesting. Michael Jordan was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame and gave a speech as he was inducted. And what was amazing to me was, here's a guy who's done basically everything there is to do in basketball. Just completely dominated the sport, kicked New York's butt up and down the street repeatedly. But, and then drove even to compete in things like golf, baseball, all over the place. So this is a guy really just amazing competitive powers. But what was amazing to me about his induction speech into the Hall of Fame was he's still angry. He's still super salty, still really bitter at, like, coaches who kicked him off teams, like in high school, way back. He's been holding grudges. So this guy is powered by hate, right? So he's been driven to just amazing, unparalleled competitive heights by salt and anger and, just rage. So that's one path to becoming, like, a superstar. Daigo does not seem so dark. And what is a true superstar and achieving these levels? Is a person like this doomed to be consumed by darkness and the dark hado, or are you able to make it a part of a happy life? Is it possible to reach the greatest height without giving into the rage?
Well, I have to say it's the first time I've ever heard myself being called the Michael Jordan of anything. So that's really surprising to me. But, well, actually I can kind of relate because I feel like when I was in, my teens, I had that, that rage, that extreme urge to win no matter what. I was hyper competitive. Out of, the entire year, 363 days, I would be at the arcade. I would just be home one day for New Year's, basically. But other than that, I was grinding it out, every day, being in the arcade, being in that competitive environment, and I was really driven to win no matter what. On the flip side, it really did make me a really kind of, not antisocial, but I wasn't a very pleasant person to be around with. People would say hi and they'd be like, whatever, I'm trying to concentrate here, playing, my match. So now that, I've come to where I am, I really don't feel like I need to have that kind of motivation anymore in order to do well. So, it does do things for a lot of people, so I'm not going to say that you don't need, that kind of really driven, fierce, competitive nature to win, but if you don't have that, you need something else. You need some emotion to really drive you to the next level. Because if you don't have that emotion, you're going to get somewhere and then you're going to be satisfied. So really what it comes down to is finding that something, like I mentioned, I feel, extremely blessed to be in the position of being, a pro gamer and being, being able to come to events like these and have these kind of experiences. So, having that emotion that really drives me to the next level is something that keeps me going.
That is very true, yes. You show me someone who doesn't mind losing. I'll show you a loser. And that's true. And it's, different things can sort of power that at different points in your life. Well, I mean, so, in talking about success, Umehara-san, for those who don't know here, has achieved a level of fame and celebrity in Japan that we don't really see always from our competitive gamers here. We have, they're huge within their domains, but these are not the sort of people you usually see on TV or talk shows or anything like that, much less writing best-selling books. So Daigo's book has been in the top 10 best-selling books in the Japanese Amazon twice. It's back there again now. And, that's pretty incredible. He's on, talk shows with sort of popular figures, all that kind of stuff. So I guess I wonder, how are you regarded by people in Japan who are not from the gaming world? How do they think of you? Are you some sort of weirdo, or is it, what's the idea there? And also, is this affecting your training? Because it's more fun to probably sit around a talk show than to, be grinding it out in the arcade, or maybe not. But what is the situation there?
どう思ってるんですかね。
So it's definitely increased. I've been, recognized more and often in the street. Actually, when I was just coming over here and leaving Japan from Narita, I went to grab some ramen, and the guy working at the ramen shop was like, "Good luck. You're going to another tournament?" And I was like, "Who are you?" But he knew who I was, so that was really cool. When I was going through the little luggage inspection, the guy took my, I gave my bag to the guy, and he was like, "You're Daigo, right?" So yeah, so that was another cool thing. So it's been happening more and more where these normal people who don't normally seem to be gamers or things like that, they know who I am, and I think that's really great. Yeah, and definitely another cool thing is that people really look at my life as they don't really. Of course, I'm like a pro gamer, but what people want to know about me is not necessarily about what game I play or how I play. They're really more interested in my lifestyle or my story. So
Hair product.
Yeah, things like that. So it's really interesting to see how the normal person, while they can't necessarily connect to the games in particular, they can they see something in me that they can connect to. So I think that's really great as well.
What was your toughest defeat and your greatest victory? And what did you take away or learn from each?
それは20歳ぐらいかな。20歳ぐらいだと思うんですけど。
When I was 15, I won, the national Capcom Street Fighter tournament. When I was 17, I won it again. When I was 19, I won it a third time. So when that happened, I was like, man, I'm really good. Like, no one can touch me in this game. So, I was really high on myself. I was really, amazed at, and I thought it was really easy. I had no problems winning. And then, but when I came to the fourth time, then I started to really feel the pressure. Like, okay, I won 3 in a row. I have to win. And then up until that time, I'd always thought, like, as long as I put like my maximum effort into it, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna get results, because that's how it had always been. Like, I felt like I put in more dedication, more work into the game than anyone else, and because I did that, I was always going to get results. And that had been true up until the fourth tournament. So, but when that came around, it didn't turn out that way. I did lose. So, that was really, the most crushing defeat I would say in my career. Because that was something that really brought me down, back to earth. I was, all high on myself. But then once I had that defeat in the tournament, I realized, hey, it's not just me. Everyone else is also really trying to do their best. They're really trying to improve their game. So it's not really about just one person and what they want to do. People lose, and that's what normal people do. And that seems like a really crazy thing to say, but I'd never really experienced that until that particular point. So that's definitely what sticks out in my mind.
すごいそれは自分にとって良かったですね。それまではもう俺すげえみたいな感じだったんで、そこで負けてようやくそっか、これが普通っていうか、負けて当たり前なんだなっていうことをその時初めて気づきましたね。2009年か。2009年の多分、4月か。
So yeah, with regards to my greatest victory, I would have to say basically the 2009 was the year that I really felt was something that really brought me back, because that was the time, I had been away from fighting games for a long time, and then Street Fighter 4 came out, and we had the national tournament, I believe, in like March or April, something like that, and Justin Wong was there, Punko was there, Io was there. That was the first time that I had been in a really big tournament in a long time, and then I came back and I won. And then I was invited to EVO that year, and then I won that also. So, I really been away for a long time, but I came back and I got that, success right away. And I felt like, because I was able to win the national tournament as well as EVO, Mad Catz decided that they, were interested in sponsoring me and things like that. So really where I am now is I really give a lot of, weight and credit towards, what I had done in 2009. Being able to win those two tournaments, I really feel like I was really lucky, but I did manage to win in the end, so that is something that really sticks out for me.
だと思うんですよね。だからやっぱ2009年のエボっていうのは特別思い出深いです。
Do you consider yourself a role model for younger players? And going back to the beginning, if you did have a son, would you encourage him to follow a similar path if he was also good at fighting games and follow in the advice of your own father?
Yeah, I definitely see myself as somewhat of a role model for younger gamers and younger people. Ever since I've become a pro gamer, I've had more opportunities to do talk shows and different events where I've come to realize that people do look up to me, and then I do have to set an example for them. As a pro gamer, to have them have something to aim for. So I really do think that if I can get more people to be interested in fighting games, interested in being competitive, I really think that that is something that I'd like to pursue. Yeah, if I had a kid, I wouldn't make him play fighting games, but if he from himself said, "Hey Dad, what I want to do in life is become a pro gamer," I don't think I'd be able to stop him, because my father let me do what I want to do, so I'd have to do the same for my kid as well.
All right, well, I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask, if you ever stop playing, how would you like to be remembered?
そうですね。多分ね、今の自分の中の理想としては、若い頃、10代とか、なんか有名な動画。
So yeah, I mean, if it came to the day where I had to quit fighting games and then had to do something else, I'd like to be remembered as not the guy who quit because he couldn't win anymore or because his skill got low and he didn't have reactions or something like that. He wouldn't be successful. I would hope that I'd have the ability to play for as long as I could. And even if I wasn't able to win as much anymore, I do hope that I'd be able to inspire people to really think, wow, that guy has an amazing play style, or he puts a lot of effort or a lot of thought into what he does, and he's a really cool player. That's how I'd like to be remembered. So, yeah.
しぶといやつだったなっていうふうに思われたいかもしれないですね。
はい。
But please join me in thanking Daigo Umehara all the way from Tokyo, Japan.